Elise Stefanik, who is a contender to be Donald Trump's vice presidential pick, was on CNN with Kaitlyn Collins. And I saw a brief piece of it, and it seemed like she was fighting the good fight, not letting CNN put her on the defensive. So let's check it out.
And joining me now, New York Republican Congresswoman Elise Stefanik, the House Republican Conference Chair and the highest-ranking woman in House leadership. I should note, Congresswoman, thanks for being here on this busy day. I'm just curious what it says to you about the U.S. that the Supreme Court is even hearing an argument like this about a former president and whether or not he violated the insurrectionist clause.
Well, it means that we have a judicial system that is out to get him, along with the Democrats that are running it. Very simple. That's what Colorado did.
Shows that the left and the Democrat Party in Joe Biden's campaign, they know they're going to lose at the ballot box, which is why you're seeing lawfare, you're seeing witch hunt after witch hunt, court case after court case, going after Joe Biden's top political opponent, which is Donald Trump. And today was a very bad day for Joe Biden. It was a very bad day in court for the left. It was a very bad day for the Colorado bogus court case. It was a very good day for President Trump, and it was a good day for the Constitution and the American people. The American people are going to make this decision in November, not radical bureaucrats from the state of Colorado, not radical judges or far-left prosecutors.
But even though it's Republican and independent voters who brought this lawsuit in Colorado, I mean, I think that's
what you call a straw man. That is such a weak argument because, of course, the organizers of this are going to go after Republicans that they can put on the front face of the brochure that they're handing out. Look, this is a Republican-led thing. This is a total straw man by her asking Elise Stefanik to defend the fact that it was, quote, Republicans that filed the lawsuit.
An important part of this as well.
This is a witch hunt against President Trump, and it is not a coincidence that it is while President Trump is skyrocketing in the polls. Meanwhile, we saw a disastrous day for Joe Biden. Joe Biden started this week plummeting.
You see, unlike me, I would have kind of gone on the defense by calling out her argument as a straw man. Maybe that's not completely defensive, but she just counters with an attack on the Democrats and maintaining the narrative that it's a witch hunt. Good for her.
In the polls, the weakest polling for a modern day president, an incumbent president, and yet you saw a feeble mental acuity lacking in the president of the United States just today. So this is a horrible day. It's a disastrous day for Joe Biden. It's a winning day for Donald Trump. And the Supreme Court case is likely to have multiple liberal justices that side with the conservative justices in this case, siding for the Constitution.
So you think that the court here is going to rule and overturn the Supreme Court in Colorado's decision?
Absolutely. And you heard questions, whether it was from Justice Elena Kagan, you heard multiple questions from the liberal justices who are likely, I believe this could be a 9-0, an 8-1, or a 7-2 case.
So the next thing that the Supreme Court could potentially take up is the question of Donald Trump's argument, his assertion of presidential immunity. If you trust the Supreme Court's decision on the 14th Amendment, will you accept what they decide on presidential immunity as well?
Well, certainly I will have something to say when the court makes that decision, but I already have put out a public statement. Of course, the president has presidential immunity. You can't handcuff a sitting president of the United States for future presidents to go after them. It would not allow them to do their job in their official capacity. So that was a wrong-headed decision. I expect the Supreme Court will overturn that as well.
The appeals court did.
I actually hope that she's right, but I don't think that she is. I think that the Supreme Court is not going to decide the case in Trump's favor, and it is more of a delay tactic by the Trump team. And who can blame them, because the case itself is BS completely, but I'm not sure they want to set that precedent. On the other hand, what Elise Stefanik is saying is that they may not want to enable detractors of the president to charge him with whatever crime while he's in office and prevent the president from executing as the executive on his job. It's a fair point, too.
Decision.
Yes.
Does that extend to President Biden? Do you think that he can do whatever and not get prosecuted as well?
Well, that's what the Trump campaign put out. They said this is a very slippery slope because it means that if you're of an opposing party, that you could go after your predecessor based upon policy disagreements or official acts. So that's why this is so egregious. And
that's exactly what's happening with the Democrats weaponizing the judicial system in an effort to go after who they consider to be an enemy, because it's going to just revert back and it's going to be done to them. This is just the way that human nature is. And actually, they would completely deserve it. I'm not in favor of it. They would completely deserve it.
Reality is, Kaitlyn, the issues that the American people are concerned about, they're concerned about the border, they're concerned about the inflation crisis, they're concerned about the lack of leadership from the sitting president of the United States, Joe Biden. That's why they're going to make the decision to vote for President Trump at the polls. And that's why you're seeing, despite lawsuit after lawsuit, President Trump's numbers continue to go up, because this is not a fair justice system right now.
And that's what we all should realize. It absolutely is a weaponized justice system against Republicans. We are seeing that in the way that the DOJ is prosecuting multiple cases.
Now, you see the justice system being weaponized against Joe Biden's top political opponent, and that's Donald Trump.
I think the scathing report, though, that came out today that you referenced on President Biden's handling of documents would suggest that it's not weaponized, because it was quite brutal in its assessment. But if he had been charged,
prosecution,
if he had been charged, would you make the argument that he shouldn't have been charged because he has presidential
first of all,
immunity?
if you look at what the special counsel said, it was a willfully not abiding by rules when it comes to classified information, willfully breaking the law. And the only reason they're not pursuing prosecution is because of the lack of mental acuity of the President of the United States. And this disastrous press conference
cooperated.
No,
so
no,
do you agree
it's specifically
having classified documents
because of the mental acuity that was pointed out in the document. That's why you saw a panicked White House forced out a doddering, unfit President of the United States for a disastrous press conference to trying to clean it up, and it only did more damage. The reality, Kaitlyn, is Donald Trump is going to win this November, and Democrats are spiraling out of control because they see that Joe Biden continues to plummet. His polls are going to go down much further tomorrow based upon that horrific press conference today.
And that's why I don't believe that Joe Biden is going to be the nominee. I don't believe that the deep state, the Democrats that have prosecuted Trump like this, are going to turn over on their bellies and take an L, knowing that the public knows what I said in 2020, that Joe Biden absolutely has dementia. It just further developed today, where it's apparent for everybody who's not even paying attention. And there's no way that they're going to take what I assume would be an automatic loss at the polls and not replace him. Obviously, I think it's going to be Gavin Newsom who's going to be inserted into the contender role.
And it's selective prosecution. The fact that it's not even a slap on the wrist when the prosecutor himself, the special counsel himself,
but
it is not a slap on the wrist when they
that if
specifically
Donald
say
Trump,
we're not pursuing that prosecution.
But they talked, a big part of this is that President Biden went and sat down with them for 2 days, over the course of 2 days. Obviously, that's the interview that you're talking about, where they talked about his age. Donald Trump hasn't cooperated. Don't you just think if he had cooperated, he could be in the same situation?
This is at the behest of Joe Biden.
But if he had cooperated, don't you think he could be in the same situation?
First of all, there is a difference
here.
President Trump has, according to the Presidential Records Act, he has declassification authorities. Joe Biden does not have that when he was Vice President of the United States.
Absolutely correct.
Joe Biden also had classified documents when he was a sitting senator. That is not covered by the Presidential Records Act. So to say,
I've read the Presidential Records Act. It also doesn't give Trump the authority to just take documents and keep them in a ballroom.
This was a raid on Mar-a-Lago, Kaitlyn, versus working with Joe Biden and saying he willfully broke the law but refusing to prosecute.
But
it
that's
is selective prosecution.
That's my point, because Trump did not hand over the documents for more than a year. Jim Trusty could tell you
from
that.
the DOJ, from Joe Biden's DOJ, ordered by Merrick Garland not to prosecute against Joe Biden, even though it specifically found that he willfully broke the law.
It was an
and on top of that,
the
reason why they're not prosecuting is because they say he's mentally unfit to put in front
mentally unfit to be prosecuted, but not mentally unfit to be president, according to so many Democrats. He was mentally unfit in 2020, and we've seen the rapid deterioration of Biden to this point. So she's absolutely right. And note, she stays aggressive. She does not allow Kaitlyn Collins to back her into a corner. No, she's out there. She's exchanging blows with Kaitlyn in the center of the ring and doing a phenomenal job.
Pursue that. That is unheard of, and it is selective prosecution, and it's why people inherently know across this country, if your last name happens to be Biden or Clinton, you get to live by a different set of rules than everyday average Americans.
I think Hunter Biden would disagree with that, and I will note Robert
Hunter Biden got a sweetheart deal. Let's talk about that.
He's been indicted by the
corruption of the Biden
Hunter Biden was indicted, and he's got a special counsel. This was a special counsel,
and then got a sweetheart deal from Joe Biden's DOJ.
I want to talk about you because I think in a lot of your public appearances and your public comments and the resolutions that Republicans are introducing on Capitol Hill that you're a part of, people want to know if you're auditioning to be Donald Trump's vice president. Have you handed over any documents or been a part of any vetting process with the Trump team yet regarding that?
I'm proud to be one of the top surrogates for President Trump. I voted for President Trump in 2016. I was proud to work with him. I've worked with him on his impeachment defense team when the first witch hunt started against him, perpetrated by the Democrats and Adam Schiff. And I'm proud to be a top surrogate. I would proud to serve in a future Trump administration, but we have a lot to do. I have a lot of responsibility as the House Republican Conference Chair, and most importantly, as the representative for New York's 21st Congressional District, giving them a seat at the highest level. And we're focused on the issues that matter to the American people. The border crisis, which is raging across our country. House Republicans passed a border security bill. Joe Biden has failed. In fact, he has caused this border crisis.
Also, I mean, the Republicans in the Senate.
We passed a border bill.
Right, one that was never going to pass a Democratic.
We passed a border bill, and you and I both know how difficult it has been historically for a border bill to come together.
Yes, we just saw what happened with Republicans on Capitol Hill.
Here's the deal with the border. The fact is that Joe Biden has begged people to come over the border. They know that they're invited, and they're all, if they were given the vote, which the Democrats want, and I believe this is the primary reason, going to vote Democrat because they recognize the hand that is reaching across and pulling them across the border. So the fact that the Republicans, some of them, refuse to abide by a bill that would essentially keep the border open and is being framed by people like Kaitlyn Collins as this wonderful bill for America, it's like the arsonist trying to offer to put out the fire by codifying into law that he can light a certain portion of the house on fire and then wanting your gratitude for having offered such a deal.
Republicans passed a border bill that Joe Biden opposed.
I want to talk about the
Biden border crisis is because of Joe Biden's executive action. HR2
he is a Democratic president.
And Joe Biden opposed that.
Right, because it was Trump-era immigration
policies. The reason why he opposed it is because he wants a wide-open border, which is what his executive actions caused.
Well, he said he was willing to shut the border down, but
he was willing to shut the border down. That's such bullshit. He asked for the border to be open. Again, that's the arsonist saying, I'm going to help you put out the fire. It's complete malarkey, to use a Joe Biden word.
He has the executive authority to do so. He has the executive authority to do so. No, I'm not.
I'd like to return to my question.
I'm not allowing you to just say something that's factually not true. He has the executive authority right now to end catch and release. He has the executive authority right now
and Congress has the ability to pass legislation.
And we did.
But let's talk about the vice presidency, because you just said that.
Again, she's switching the topic, but you have to give Elise Stefanik tremendous credit for keeping the pressure on. And Kaitlyn is the one who is actually being backed into the corner and pummeled.
You would be willing to serve in a Trump administration. Had you been vice president on January 6, 2021, what would you have done?
I stood up for the Constitution. I believe it was
what would you have done if you were vice president?
I would not have done what Mike Pence did. I don't think that was the right approach. I specifically stand by what I said on the House floor, and I stand by.
And here we go. Tomorrow, over the last few days, they are going to paint her as an insurrectionist. This is what that question was for. Siding with January 6th rioters is going to be the headlines against her.
My statement, which was there was unconstitutional overreach. There was unconstitutional overreach in states like Pennsylvania. And I think it's very important that we continue to stand up for the Constitution and have legal and secure elections, which we did not have in 2020. And the tens of millions of Americans agree with me, Kaitlyn.
Well, I would say the Supreme Court in the state of Pennsylvania said that Republican passed changes to their law was constitutional. But it's notable to hear you say
it was not constitutional. Alan Dershowitz, the famed Harvard liberal lawyer, weighed in and said absolutely not.
Given you're in the running to be the vice president, that you would have rejected those votes. Come this election, when Vice President Harris is in that position, would you be okay if she rejected the votes if Donald Trump wins?
Listen, we need to make sure the election is constitutional and legal. We're talking about Democrats. It was not, Kaitlyn. It was unconstitutional when there was circumventing state legislatures unilaterally changing election law. I stand by my statement on the House floor. And again, tens of millions of Americans agree with that statement and have questions about the validity and legality
Republicans are so in doubt about the election.
No, because the American people.
Look at the smugness of Kaitlyn Collins because the Republicans are so in doubt of the elections. She's mocking the person that's absolutely destroying her in this interchange.
have rightful questions on the
Because
constitutionality.
Republicans are
And
so
let
down
me
about
say this for you. When it comes to this election, we are seeing the Democrats trying to remove President Trump from the ballot.
Yep.
That is not constitutional. That
Nope.
is not a legal and safe, secure election. That's literally what's being discussed at the
Banana
Supreme
Republic.
Court today, because radical leftists can't stand the fact that Donald Trump continues to skyrocket in the polls and Joe Biden continues to plummet. And
me
when you
ask
get
you more
outside of
about that.
CNN, if you get outside of CNN and talk to hardworking American people, like in my district, like across this country, they want to see new leadership in President Trump, and that's
But
why
can
he's
I-
going to win.
You deleted a statement that was on your website recently calling January 6th
publicly
a tragic
available
day.
on
Why
all of my
was it
so-
deleted, though?
I have all my public statements from the current Congress. You can access all of my previous public statements from.
But why was it deleted from your website?
I only have the press releases from this current Congress. All of those statements are available since I was elected on multiple social media accounts, and you can access it there, just
so it
like
wasn't a
everyone can.
retraction of what you said.
I have no, certainly not. I have press releases for this current Congress, and the reality is you as a journalist can go through all of my official social media accounts and find all of my previous statements.
What a great answer to a gotcha question.
The last thing I have to ask you about is you've referred to the January 6th defendants as hostages. As someone who was in Israel for several weeks after October 7th and met with families of real hostages, don't you find that offensive?
I've given those family members of hostages in Israel, we've hosted them at, among House Republicans, and we continue to stand up to make sure Israel has the right to defend itself. And Kaitlyn, you should be condemning the fact that the President of the United States called into question Israel at his press conference today. Meanwhile, he misunderstood and confused the President of Egypt with the President of Mexico. But I will continue to stand up for Israel's right to defend itself, and yet you have a President of the United States who issued a veto threat. I stand by my statement there, and what people are seeing is an unequal Department of Justice, where on one hand you have BLM violent rioters who are not prosecuting.
You're going off
who are not prosecuting. You have BLM violent
Good for her.
rioters who are not being prosecuted by the DOJ,
Yep.
and you have nonviolent individuals who were in the Capitol on January 6th but did not commit violent acts who are being prosecuted by the DOJ, being held. That is inherently un-American.
You
That's
draw the
inherently
distinction
un-American.
in the criminal defendant.
That is, again, the justice system applying the law unequally. When you have people that are rioting in the streets, burning down buildings, a person who set a pawn shop ablaze, I believe it was in Minnesota, at the outset of the BLM riots, he did so and killed somebody inside, and he got 10 years with the U.S. attorneys petitioning the court for leniency for him because he was on the right side of the law. Meanwhile, you have people that occupied an abortion center, just the hallways, singing, trespassing, maybe, but they got 10 plus years. You had Mark Houck, who the Justice Department went after because he got into an altercation 100 meters away, 100 yards away from the abortion clinic and shoved the guy to the ground. And they went after him and tried to pin all sorts of federal charges out on him. After the Philadelphia DA dismissed the cases, they said nothing to see here, and the Justice Department and the FBI raided his house. Meanwhile, you have people in New York, the lawyers who threw Molotov cocktails into police cars, who got 1 year in prison. Sorry, this is a very sore point with me. 20 years for Enrique Tarrio, who wasn't even at the Capitol on that day. It's sickening, and I'm glad that Elise Stefanik is bringing this up for the public once again to hopefully see.
And the people who were raped and kidnapped into Gaza,
I draw a distinction by the DOJ, the fact that they refuse to prosecute violent rioters during BLM, and yet they have an unequal set of rules and go after nonviolent individuals on January 6th. CNN continues to struggle because you continue to fail to understand the American people's frustration with this two-tiered set of justice in this country.
I don't think that has to do with calling the criminal
It
defendants
has to do with a lot
hostages.
more than that, but that's one aspect of it.
Congresswoman Elise Stefanik, thanks for your time tonight.
Kaitlyn, thank you so much.
Wow. I mean, she did a fabulous job there. And at the very end, you could definitely tell that she was very displeased with her counterparty, Kaitlyn Collins, on the other end, the way that she said through her teeth, "Thank you very much." I exaggerated it just slightly, but obviously you guys can tell that. You're very smart people out there. But she did a fantastic job of staying on point and not allowing the leftist media to frame things. And I don't mind the fact that they're adversarial. This should be the position. You should be able to test the guests that you invite. You shouldn't be giving softball interviews like MSNBC would give to Kamala Harris, or that Bill Maher recently gave to Gavin Newsom, where he basically got down on his knees and filleted him. And my only question, Bill Maher, is what does Gavin's cum taste like? Because that's the type of interview that he gave to Gavin. So I'm fine with that. But I think that Elise Stefanik did a tremendous job, and I'm really grateful that there are people that come on to CNN and possibly give the viewers an alternative viewpoint and maybe open their minds to the fact that the criminal prosecutions that are taking place in the United States are unfair. They're double standard. Plus, justice is not blind. If you have an R next to your name, you're treated completely differently. I would love to have your guys' opinions on this interview, this talk that these two had. Please leave them below in the comment sections and have yourself a great day. Thumb up the video, subscribe if you haven't. Peace.